Hello, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to see you here today. We're going to give everyone else just one more minute to join us. And so while we're waiting, if you have not already, which I see a few of you already have, please change your Zoom name to include your organization name so that we all know who everyone is. And you can do that by clicking on the ... in the upper right-hand corner of your video, then clicking rename, and then adding your organization name to your Zoom name. Hi, welcome to those who just joined. We're gonna get started in just one more minute. If you could please rename yourself to include your organization name by clicking on the ... in the upper right-hand corner of your video, then clicking rename and adding your organization name. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. I'm so excited to see all of you here today. And I feel like today is going to be just an incredible continuation of some of the conversations we started at our last gifting session. I let all of our incredible panelists today know about the projects that you're working on and the topics. And so they are going to speak to some of those points. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So please do be thinking about your questions, and this is the time to get really specific. So please do ask questions that will help you as you design and implement your culture change pilot program. I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors for All In for Advancement, Comcast and Workhuman, and give a special warm welcome to Workhuman since this is their show today, and I can't wait for us to all have the opportunity to learn from them. And both Comcast and Workhuman really embody the culture and the mission of this program, which is to make Greater Boston the best place for all women to work. And we feel really lucky to have their support in this endeavor. The mission of All In for Advancement is to make Greater Boston the best place for all women to work, and each of you have played really crucial roles in that. In the last 7 or 8 months, we have worked together in building skills in gender acumen, design thinking, entrepreneurial thought and action, all with the mission of you having the opportunity to design and implement a pilot culture change program at your organization that will really push the needle towards more gender inclusivity and equity. And it's been incredible to hear like what you've already accomplished. And I really hope that today's session will help support your forward momentum towards that mission, because each person here has such incredible experience in some of the areas that you are looking at on mentoring and onboarding and other culture change initiatives. And I think that you'll get a lot out of getting to hear from them today. So we will be leaving about 20 to 30 minutes at the end for your questions. So please do be thinking about them. And we'll ask you to primarily ask your questions by raising your hand at the end, but you can submit them through chat as well. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Lauren Zajac, who's the Chief Legal Officer at Workhuman, who will introduce the panel and get us kicked off. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thanks, Allison. We're so happy to be here. Welcome, everyone. As Allison said, I'm Lauren Zajac, and I'm bringing a panel of my colleagues and peers from Workhuman. We are hugely in support of All In for Advancement for a number of reasons. We're grateful to take an active part in the community that we live in. We're a native Irish company, but we're co-headquartered both in Dublin, Ireland, and in Framingham, Massachusetts. So we are thrilled to be able to participate in the Boston community in this way. We know that your primary goal in this program is to understand examples of building great cultures and each of you becoming change agents in your respective organizations. At Workhuman, this is our mission. Workhuman's an employee recognition and continuous performance management provider. Our social recognition is optimized to support any stage of a company's journey toward building better and more inclusive cultures. So our social recognition platform and other parts of our solution on the same platform has been designed to encourage and amplify the frequent and repetitive sharing of recognition, the sharing of gratitude by and among employees and teams across functions, obviously for us between Dublin and Boston, across geographies and across hierarchies. So necessarily, we've seen that the flow of gratitude brings together different voices, different perspectives, and creates inclusive cultures. In our 20 years of bringing this practice to companies of all sizes and all growth points, we've honed the ability to tie our clients' aspirations, to tie our clients' values to their recognition programs. Many of our clients' values are often inclusion, diversity, equity. In creating these cultures of recognition, these values are modeled and amplified every single day. We've seen both in our clients, and you'll hear today from my terrific panel internally at Workhuman, how a true culture of recognition naturally results in a more welcoming onboarding process, an ability for different perspectives to be heard, and a more opportune environment for mentoring. And lastly, an opportunity for humans to bring their unique and authentic selves to work. To effectively create recognition culture, it takes the support, obviously, of leadership, and it takes a willingness of all the teams to work together, to be committed to sharing the experience. So we wanted to bring you a panel today of a cross-section of our incredible team, because this work can't be done in a silo. So I'm happy to introduce our panel. With me today, I have Chris O'Sullivan, who is our VP of Finance, Lori D'Oliveira, who is our Office Manager, Jana Millette, who is our Recruiting Manager, Sharon Pollard, who is our Senior HR Business Partner, Andrea Johnson, who is our Senior Director of Global Business Systems Group, Amy Rice, who is our Corporate Communications and will be our moderator today, and myself, obviously, representing Legal and Compliance. So thank you again for having us. We're so happy to share our journey and our story. And with that, I will turn it over to Amy.
Thank you, Lauren. It's wonderful to be here. So to set the stage, I actually would like to start with Sharon. Can you talk a little bit more about thank you and recognition and gratitude? You know, obviously Workhuman is built on the premise of recognition and the importance of recognition when building an inclusive culture, and then maybe talk about a few suggestions of how organizations can intentionally build in recognition to support some of these initiatives.
Absolutely, and hello everybody. Pleasure to be here with you all. So at Workhuman, and especially as an HR business partner, I am very intimately involved with our product suite. And for us at Workhuman, you know, the social recognition is more than a tool. It's more than a piece of software. At its core, it serves as a culture change agent that is truly influencing our employee behaviors as they align to our core company values and expectations. So the way we do this is we have a live social recognition feed that every employee signs into every single day. And you can scroll through this feed, and that's the very social way, transparent way of exhibiting what great looks like, again, aligned to our core company values. And every employee feels noticed, recognized, and not only that, but we often refer to it as the ripple effect of recognition, where everybody around the global company is able to congratulate each other on that recognition moment. So that moment that matters is not only for the receiver of that recognition moment, but for everybody involved around the global company. So it's really powerful. And again, as an HR professional, it's a dream come true to use a product like this because we're able to measure behavior. And there aren't a lot of tools out there that can do that. A lot are dull or bureaucratic and aren't engaging. And so not only the HR team is involved, but our leaders and the whole global population is really engaged in this product. And in return, you're feeling appreciated every day. You're feeling recognized for your hard work. And that power of gratitude, the power of saying thank you to one another really continues through that culture. And that's how you build a people first culture. At least that's one of the ways. So recognition is embedded in everything that we do. We are super users of the entire Workhuman Cloud suite, which is incredible. And it's all about an employee-centric way of bringing the whole self to work. So when you think about DE&I behaviors that you want out of your employee base, out of the culture that you're building, This is an integral way to do that, because through celebrating the whole human at work, every single employee can be their genuine, authentic self. And in return, you have more engaged, productive employees that are truly connected to your company's mission, the priorities you're setting forth, to their teams, and so forth. So all in all, it's very, very powerful. And we use it in onboarding. We use it in celebrating birthdays and service anniversaries. We use it in celebrating the whole community. We have various employee resource groups at Workhuman. So we leverage the power of celebrating the crowd for that. So there's a multitude of ways to do this and build a culture based on recognition.
Thank you, Sharon.
Sure.
So I think for me, this is a nice segue into Jana and how we've sort of extended this culture, right? The power of giving and receiving and bringing the whole human to work, to finding those humans that add to our culture. So Jana, can you talk a little bit about the importance of recognition on recruiting, perhaps with a little bit of an equity lens, and sort of the shift that you've seen in your tenure, and how you've helped keep our culture intact?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I mean, it teases it up nicely from a recruiting perspective. I always like to joke that, like, Workhuman sells itself. You know, as a recruiter, I worked in many different companies where you had to spend a lot of time really pitching the company. You know, I don't have to sell Workhuman. I just get to talk about why I love working here. So that recognition and that culture of recognition is entwined in all facets of recruiting. But to step back a little bit, to give you a little bit of history. So I came on board about 4.5 years ago as the first member of the US recruiting team. So I was brought on because there was a turning point in regards to our growth. You know, we had looked forward from a strategic standpoint, you know, and instead of hiring 1 or 2 or 3 people at a time, it was going to be more like dozens of people at a time. So Workhuman was ready to bring on and have that internal focus. So I was brought on board. And I like to say I was recruiting party of one was the was the tagline I used, and it was very busy very quickly. I want to say there was like 6 or 7, you know, open job requisitions when I started, and like within 4 or 5 weeks, it had changed to more like 25 job requisitions. So the growth was apparent. Lauren was one of the first hiring managers I worked for or worked with at the time. So and actually most people on this team we've recruited for at this point. So I've had the pleasure to help really grow the recruiting team from 1, now we're a team of 6, which includes a coordinator, recruiters, and our employer brand team rolls up underneath recruiting as well. So, you know, it's been a huge opportunity, not just from the growth perspective in numbers, but also from, you know, the process and operations and the strategy around what we're doing and what we're looking for from a recruiting standpoint. You know, so the focus for us is always about enhancing our culture. You know, culture fit is not something that we say at Workhuman because that's not going to help us growing and kind of get to where we want to be. So when we're recruiting, we're looking for that enhancement. So, you know, as we're focusing on diversifying the workforce, and as we're looking to support DEI initiatives and help drive that culture of change within other organizations and help bringing the right people on, we look for people who don't just have an ideal skill set background. You know, they might be able to check every box in the job requirement, but, you know, if they don't bring that enhancement, if they don't bring that something special to the table that's going to help up level us as an organization, you know, it's not a match for Workhuman. So, you know, for us, we really focus on you know, that culture and that opportunity to bring more and to do more. And so it's, you know, we're able to up level the company that way. We have a member of the HR team that's actually responsible for hiring for culture enhancement. So when we're creating a panel, and we do hire by committee, I like to say, you know, it's the hiring manager and a peer and somebody who's assessing technical ability or whatever the case. There's always somebody, usually from the HR team, who's focusing on that culture enhancement and what they're going to bring to the team that they're on, but also the organization themselves. On top of that, you know, we're able to really focus our recruiting efforts on the culture enhancements, but also bring people on and show them who we are right away. So we like to say it's a boutique white glove recruiting experience that we're providing. And we're providing that for a lot of reasons. Like, of course, we want our candidates to be happy, but we also want to give them a taste of what it's actually like to be a human at Workhuman. You know, we go, and I'm sure Lori will speak to this more, but we go above and beyond for our humans at every aspect, from the day that they contact to us and the day that hopefully they retire with us. So, you know, that custom, caring, boutique experience that we're providing, that extra communication, that open feedback, that the recognition that they're getting from day one is so important to us. And it really showcases who we are at Workhuman, so that we're able to show them the pride in what we offer. So, you know, that's a really core foundation of who we are. So hiring that culture enhancement, bringing more to the table than just the paper, you know, that you know, we don't hire a resume anymore, right? We hire a full human, just as Sharon said. So we encourage that whole person, that whole human, to be brought on with Workhuman.
Thank you, Jenna. And I think bringing your whole self to work and the whole human to work is also, you know, it starts with recruiting, but we really see it throughout your tenure here. And then again, starting with the onboarding process. So I'd like to turn it over to Lori, because for me, I see this change and impact really from when people start. So can you talk a little bit about the onboarding process and how do you make sure that people really can contribute? And I think we've onboarded a lot of humans in this remote world. So maybe even talk a little bit about the remote aspect of onboarding.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I did start laughing when Jana was just talking, because when I was thinking about what I was going to say this morning, one of the first things that came to mind, knowing I was going to follow Jana, was the white glove recruiting experience that we offer people coming to work for our company, and thinking that after going through such an experience, you better have a star-studded onboarding process to follow that. And I think what we did was we really took a step back and did a deep dive into what we feel is important for our new hires to know about our company, as well as what past new hires have told us would be beneficial based on their feedback after going through the program. So I feel, and I'm sure everybody on the panel will understand once I give you some information about what we actually go through in the process, we have a very intensive onboarding program here. And it serves a purpose, because we want everybody coming into the company to understand all aspects of what we do here. They may be going into a certain team. However, what we do here at Workhuman is very complex, and we want everybody to understand it from all of the aspects. So we actually are onboarding our humans for a total of 90 days. It's not just a, here's your badge, here's your desk, have a great day. You will be handheld through the 90 days by not just your manager, not just your team members, but HR, IT, the entire gamut. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the high level things that people will see when they come here. The first initial onboarding is 5 days long. On day one, they come into the office. I usually give all of our new hires an office tour, show them all of the wonderful things that we have here in our office. I'm actually in the Framingham office right now in our Dublin conference room. Then we have a welcome breakfast. The wonderful thing about the welcome breakfast is almost the entire HR department will join in this welcome breakfast. The new hire managers will also be available, and each of our new hires is assigned a buddy to go through the new hire process with them. I love this part of the onboarding process, because our employees who have been working with the company for a long time are able to share tips with the new hires on realistic expectations and how to navigate their way through what can sometimes be a daunting experience being new to a company and not really knowing what you're getting into. The rest of the first day is spent meeting with payroll, IT, HR for company history, culture, value, and benefit information, our Workhuman cloud training, and then their first manager check-in. The rest of the week consists of department overview with every department head. They will also do a product deep dive, a panel discussion featuring our Workhuman leaders, and Workhuman values and behaviors workshops. Those are extremely, extremely important to us. We want every person in this company to understand the importance of our values and behaviors here. It is very, very important to us. The next 2 weeks, they will meet with their team, their HR business partners, and any direct reports they should have if that should come into play. We also have what we call 30, 60, 90-day plans. These are developed by the manager, and they serve as a guide on networking, relationship building, product comprehension, team building, etc. These are position specific. Sales would be very different from finance, for instance, but they reinforce our commitment to mentoring, communication, making sure the new hires feel they are welcome and part of the team. And we strongly encourage our new hires to ask the questions, ask the questions, ask the questions. You know, as the office manager here, I wear a lot of different hats. However, my absolute favorite part of my job is speaking about our culture and why it is so important here. And the one aspect of our culture that continues to amaze me is how much we truly value bringing our whole selves to work each day. We feel an enormous sense of belonging, of really making a difference in how people see what it means to be recognized for making an impact. And we believe in recognizing life's moments, the achievements and the moments that matter. They are what bind us together and push us to work harder to make products that speak to connecting our humans on a level that makes us feel appreciated. And now that we live in this Zoom world where pets and kids and backgrounds have saved the day sometimes, but I really feel that if you have a culture that is genuine to who you are, it really doesn't matter if you're having to speak to it over a technology platform. If the culture is genuine, it will sell itself. It will come through to whoever's on the other side. So at the end of the day, even though I'm speaking to you through a computer, I hope that you can understand how important all of these things are to us at Workhuman. And I hope that you'll be able to actually build the culture for your company that will be able to show your new hires who you really are at the end of the day.
Lori, that was lovely. Thank you. And you really hit on something too that I want to make sure we double down on, the mentoring piece, right? Because I think as we're trying to bring change into businesses, it's about building the culture, but it's also really about mentoring. And so Sharon, if I could pass over to you, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, plenty. I think to properly answer that question, you have to back up a little bit and think about what kind of feedback-rich culture are you truly building? Because if you don't have one, mentorship may not be successful. And so it's important to raise that, because mentorship is about growth, it's about networking, it's about connecting with individuals that may not have anything to do with your day job, right? So it could be someone completely outside of your department, which is recommended. At Workhuman, mentorship is quite informal. So we believe that if you put more rigidity and formality in things like even feedback and mentorship, it simply won't happen. If it does happen, it doesn't feel genuine. It feels more forced. So at Workhuman, it's very much employee driven. We use our tool Conversations, which is part of the Workhuman Cloud Suite. And it's all about putting the employee at the center of their growth and development. And so one of the ways you can touch on mentorship there is creating a mentorship type check-in with anyone in the organization. And again, it puts the employee at the center. So the employee's at the driver's seat of creating those mentorship relationships. It's not HR or their manager telling them you are assigned to Bob to mentor you. That just doesn't happen. So the employee's at the center, the employee has control to create that relationship, and then it just flows. So it promotes accountability, it promotes growth, development, and these are all behaviors as leaders and HR professionals that we want out of our workforce, right? And I think without having employee-centric solutions, you run into the risk of creating entitlement and a very disconnected culture. So this really goes hand in hand. So I felt it was important to touch on a feedback-rich culture when speaking towards mentorship specifically.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit here because I think a big part of culture change is ensuring that there's a business case. And I think in today's COVID worlds, that might be look a little bit different for everybody. You know, the business case really is important. You know, everyone's here to make money, right? They all have shareholders and there's some accountability above that we have to work to. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris because I think people would like to hear from you from a business lens. How do you make a business case for culture change?
Sure. Yep. It can seem daunting initially, you know, making a culture change for your organization and equating that to a business case, but you know, it works. And you know, companies have different buying processes internally or externally, where you know, we deal with all size organizations, and there's organizations that are very large that could have dedicated procurement teams versus ones that have the business owners driving the decisions. But most are used to buying software or hardware either as a total set or a fixed price per employee, where recognition's a little bit different, at least the way that we do it, where you're getting, from a finance perspective, getting billed for when the awards are actually given out or actual activity. So we'll call this success-based billing. You know, if the program's doing better, there's going to be more dollars flowing through it. But it also limits the risk. If people aren't seeing the benefit, then you're not spending as much. So it's a pretty clear line to success and proving out the ROI. But any return investment you really need, or business case, you need to define the why. In the case of recognition, what I've typically seen companies do is, you know, when they're offering a recognition program because they want to remain competitive by offering an additional employee perk or benefit, or others could be maybe more aspirational, looking to change the culture through our platform, and they may tie these metrics to, you know, things like reduction in turnover or driving employee engagement or other benefits. But whatever the case may be, you definitely need to show a return on investment to kind of get this approved through the process. So traditionally, you know, models, you know, you're going to make a successful business case is about showing improvements to the bottom line, you know, either increase revenue or reduce costs. That's the traditional model that people have seen time and time again. For recognition, it really is twofold. I mean, there's a couple ways to tackle this. One is where you focus on the numbers, which is more of the traditional approach. And the most direct example is, you know, we're improving the bottom line by, for example, reducing employee attrition costs. This usually is the easiest to digest for people that are in buying mode. You know, you can equate it to lost coverage from when that person is no longer in that role. There's cost for hiring. There's time to interview with multiple people that get involved to interview somebody new in. There's training and then getting the employee up to speed. But overall, the loss of employees, you know, typically we find that can translate to, you know, as little as 6 months to as many as 12 or even more months in terms of cost to replace an existing employee who leaves voluntarily. So there is a strong correlation between recognition and retention. You know, we've worked through with our customers a lot of case studies, but we typically see that a large reduction in attrition can happen with only a small amount of awards given through the platform and recognition. So 2 examples I think that I've seen time and time again is one of our customers, Eaton. They're you know, a close to 100,000 person electrical and industrial power management company. And some of the studies we saw with them was that employees receiving just 4 awards a year left at half the rate than employees that didn't receive any awards during the year. Another one would be a nursing staff at one of our clients, you know, a very, you know, high tense job, particularly during these time and days, where we're seeing turnover, you know, over 30%, you know, very high turnover in those areas has been cut in half for those nurses that receive just 3 awards a year. So at the end of the day, these small investments, these small moments can really lead to improved retention, which can really lead to larger savings. So that's really building a case from a, you know, more traditional focus on the numbers. There's also an approach where you can focus on the people, where you're improving the workplace and culture for your employees or customers. And typically when you're going to bring something like changing the culture to a finance and procurement team, they're going to want more, and they're going to want to have the numbers that sort of back it up, you know, and equating that moving culture has benefit. And the more you can put metrics and dollars behind it, the easier the case. So one example could be employee engagement. And this can differ by company, but it ties to how you motivate and lift employees. One example we had was tying an increase in engagement to, how do you do it to increase sales and productivity? Now, that can be a little harder to quantify for some customers, but they first have to define how they measure success. That could be through productivity measures, that could be through safety results, it could be through billable hours for a professional services company, as an example. But either way, these success metrics need to be tied to like things like employee surveys, where you're linking the engagement results that you've gotten through the surveys for your particular company to recognition activity for those same employees and seeing the correlation between those two. So at a high level, the same rules apply to both, whether you're focusing on the people or the numbers for your business case, that you really need to set these success metrics, define them up front, and suggest how you're going to measure against them and then track them as you go. So that's just a bit about what I've seen work well with our customers internally in developing a business case.
Thank you. And Lauren, would you add anything to those points from a legal lens? Question one. And then question two, I think doubling down on sort of that senior leadership support for some of these culture change initiatives and just what you see from the C-suite in trying to move these things forward.
I think certainly some of that comes together in what I was going to add. From my perspective, looking through kind of the legal compliance lens and trying to build a business case in that way, one of the really interesting things that we have seen, certainly within Workhuman and at our clients, there is such a focus obviously now on DE&I. Right, there are lots of discussions around how to bring a more inclusive workplace together, how to build inclusivity and diversity into our workforces. And there's obviously lots of data that a more diverse and inclusive workforce can bring terrific business results. One of the things that I think is really important and that we've seen play out in both Workhuman and many of our clients is that really inclusivity, diversity of your workforce is about bringing different perspectives, different approaches to problems, right? Not just looking at the numbers of different segments of your workforce population. We have seen both, and Sharon mentioned earlier, right, that this constant feedback and the effect that has on culture. The psychological safety that we've seen created by constant recognition, constant gratitude is really, I think, the fundamental sort of lever, if you will, to get you to be able to, right? Lots of D&I discussions, DE&I is talking about what we want to achieve, but there are not a lot of solution-oriented, offerings out there. One of the things that we have done is by creating the psychological safety, creating the ability to be more vulnerable, to be more authentic, it allows you to have a solution-focused lens on having different discussions, bringing different perspectives, and so you're building inclusivity in that way. I think the other sort of compliance-based issue that we've seen this kind of culture solve or move towards solving is one of pay equity. It's certainly a topic of interest of mine and passion of mine, and I know it's a topic of today. Because our recognition awards, our recognition moments carry with them an economic component, and we do that, right, the giving of those moments within this culture that has that psychological safety, that safe space, if you will. There's not the same oversight as there would be on the giving of base salary or bonus, right, in an annual review. We are able to sort of take that data and look at that data for many different reasons, but specifically with respect to pay equity, and really see trends so that you can identify from a leadership position, do we have an issue here, right? Are these folks giving this other group of folks different kinds of awards with different monetary values? It just gives you a different perspective on those issues. And so from my perspective, if you're building a business case, those are two of the hot topics that leaderships, that C-suite execs want to solve. And from our experience, we've seen solutions on both of those areas in just building a culture of recognition.
Thank you. Again, I think building the culture, looking at the whole human, the giving and the receiving is such a valuable part. And for us, it's not just US based, it's truly global. You know, you can recognize a colleague on the other side of the world. And so, Andrea, thank you for being patient. This last question is for you. So I think as you obviously are representing our Dublin office, if you could spend some time talking to us about how recognition is used in our Ireland office, and then perhaps dive into your efforts a little bit related to women in tech and how recognition is playing a role in what you do every day.
Thanks, Amy. Well, that's a big question, love. So I'm going to break that into a few chunks, if you don't mind. So the Irish perspective is an interesting one because I've never been asked that, and I've been with Workhuman for 8 years. Because I think our culture, we see it as a Workhuman culture, and it ebbs and flows across those two sites. So we never see that kind of, call out about this being something particularly Irish. It's very much kind of, this is how we rock in Workhuman. I think the other piece is as well, when I was looking at sort of the last few even recognition moments that I've driven myself, these are all multifunctional, multi-sited teams. I think those days of, where I used to have a small group and we sat in the naughty corner, they've gone, do you know what I mean? So it's very much kind of these, very complex, very fast moving projects that we're working on. And so you actually get this, really vibrant, rich teams. And you can see that in the recognition moments as well. So I think that's really important to sort of call out. These are not sort of static Dublin v US pieces. So I think that's the piece around the Irish piece. I did wear a bit of green for you though. There you go. So I did do that.
Yep.
There you go. Just then sort of starting to dig in around women in tech, like Lauren, utterly passionate around equity. And obviously women in tech, we have a huge challenge there around gender equity. So I'm going to be kind and say maybe the percentages sort of US and European basis, say 25% of people in the workforce are going to be obviously female, but I actually think it's more towards the 20 mark. It's actually 21. In Workhuman, our figures are up just over 30, which is brilliant in terms of our diversity piece. On my own teams, I'm incredibly proud that we have a 50-50 gender split across the teams that I drive. And it's been a lot of hard work to get there. I think one of the pieces that we've used, and it very much goes to the heart of how we raise each other up, being women in a technological arena, is that amplification. We amplify when we see great work. And I've worked with the senior leadership across Workhuman to make sure that this is something we've really driven into our women in technology. Because if we can raise each other up like that and amplify that, we can actually start to see some really interesting things. So I've got a great example of something that's just happened this week, where we'll actually see one of our female delivery leads we'll see a nice award going out. She's just passed her executive coaching diploma, which is, sort of 18 months work, master's level work. It's brilliant. She actually went on that journey because 18 months ago, she actually saw someone else get that piece of recognition. And we were having a coffee and she said, "What you want? What was that about such and such getting?" I said, "Oh God, you'd be great at that. You'd be absolutely brilliant at that. Go and chat to her." So she created a check-in and she went to have a chat. And now she's just qualified as an executive coach, which is absolutely brilliant. But without that opportunity for those sort of, it's like a ripple effect, those kind of waves, if you like. The amplification piece is incredibly important. When you talk about culture and recognition and obviously seeing those recognitions, I know in the chat I can see lots of comments around, this is this cultural enhancement. Very quickly you see who your cultural enhancers are when you run a recognition program, because you see them pop up all the time, or you'll see them mentioned, or you see them liking or commenting on things. So you can see it straight away, but also then you get to see who your superstars are. Now we actually have one of our superstars on this call, Laurie. Laurie is a recognized superstar at Workhuman. She won our Cultural Energizer Award a few years ago. But these are the types of pieces that you can pick up very, very easily. And I think it's incredibly important as you're trying to drive equity and more visibility into groups that are really struggling in that gender balance piece. And I know Lauren's really passionate about this and has been incredibly supportive as we're trying to drive a lot more of this in at that kind of very structured level. So, I mean, that's one of the pieces that where when you're reaching into senior leadership, you actually need champions like Lauren who can do that for you. I think there's a second piece I'd love to dig into you with, and it is around that mentoring. And I know Sharon's absolutely super in this space. But one of the things that we're seeing in the women in tech arena is very much around this requirement for soft mentorship. And it's very much based on that kind of, it's emerged quickly, I have a need or a requirement, and once it's done, I can disengage. And it's usually around, I've kind of got 4 points here that I've thought about. One is usually around a soft skill. So I have a young engineer at the moment who's losing her mind over having to do her first kind of stand up at a tech network. And she's utterly like not sleeping. She's all over the place. So what we've done is we've buddied her up with someone, and they've really started to drive that in, and it's absolutely great. And there's loads of energy between the two of them. And it was actually me sort of saying, there's a number of people you can go and find. Gave her the list and she reached in herself. So very much she's in the driving seat. I think this piece is around situations as well, where you're facing challenges in work and you can think, actually, I think someone might help me with this. And we actually have a young female just been promoted into a leadership role who's actually runs a very robust critique process every so many weeks. And she's finding that really, really difficult. And as we've been talking, I've obviously talked to her about radical candor and that whole piece, and we're really driving that forward. And she's reaching into other females within the organization who have driven radical candor programs into their teams. So, I mean, you have the kind of that soft skill, and then you have maybe the situation. The other piece I'm seeing is kind of young or entry level females within technology who would actually start to be feeling very nervous as they come onto these big projects, these very complex projects, very high visibility projects that we were running in certain parts of the organization. And it's actually trying to give them a buddy who's going to mind them, give them the shorthand in the projects. As like I said, these are all very fast moving, multifunctional, multi-sited. So you want someone who can give someone the shorthand in that. So we're definitely seeing that ask around kind of project mentorship as well. And again, that would be for just the length of the project and then we're out. And obviously then for the last piece, because we are women in technology, you obviously get that technology piece as well, where you'd be asking for people to be mentored in a certain technology. I've just migrated our ERP system into AWS. So if you've got any questions about S3 buckets, I'm your woman. That's all I'm going to say on that. But I think the really strong piece for me around mentorship in this space, when you're trying to drive to better gender balance, really trying to drive that kind of amplification and try to stand great practice up, you need things like recognition. You need that, I call it knitting. It's like the threads that hold us together, that one-to-one conversation, whether that's with your manager, whether it's with one of these soft mentors, whether it's someone who you trust and you can reach into. These are all the things that kind of bind that whole piece together. And that's how we've made progress in this space. That's why we're up at 30% for our organization. And I, poster child, I'm at 50-50. So it's really, really good. Now, if you needed a translator, I'll hand you over to Amy because she's really good in this space.
Thank you. Thank you. And I applaud your 50-50 poster child. Thank you. You know, I think the key part of that, which we haven't really spoken about, but I think is important, is that the social aspect of the recognition becomes an internal communications vehicle. So you can think of it as a Facebook news feed where everybody inside your company is able to look at all the work that's being done. And so I think your example of the executive coach is perfect. You know, she was able to see somebody else get a thank you and a recognition for that, and thinking, oh, I want to do that to myself, right? But without the opportunity to see that internal network, you know, I think that opportunity is missed. So I think that's a good point to hit on. So I just have two questions that I want to open up to the group before we open up to the floor to all of you guys to ask us some questions. When you think about these culture change initiatives, what does it take to really sustain them? You know, I think there's generally, when you have a new program or something exciting, there's all this buzz at the launch. But that's not enough, right? To truly impact change, it has to be continuous and it has to be long-term. So anyone from Workhuman can answer, but I would just love any thoughts on sustaining that true change.
I can jump in if you like, because I've still got my mic on. I think there's two things. I think one, you need great leaders, and we have two on the phone, and Chris and Lauren, who are consistent in this piece about wanting to enhance our culture, about wanting to not stand still. We don't stand still in Workhuman, and sometimes we go through these uncomfortable growing pains, but they'll still stand by you as you're trying to push this forward. And I think that sort of that support at that level, I call it air cover, is incredibly important if you're really trying to drive change into an area. I think then you need energy amongst the ranks. And, you know, you really do need that kind of, and I would call Laurie like my little Duracell bunny, constantly, you know, and really going forward, and always has that energy and will always drive it forward. And I think that's incredibly important, that people can see that and know that it's there, and you can lean into it as well, which is, I think, what you guys all do on the US side. I'd love to clone her, but it's, I think that's, again, it's really important that you see those kind of shining stars within there, and you can see that ripple effect across the organization.
I think it's also about just ensuring you're embedding the employee experience on every part of the business. So at Workhuman, every single leader has a priority connected to employee experience. And as an HR professional, that's a dream come true, because as a strategic partner to the business, that's all I can want, right? That's all I could wish for, that our leaders have that lens, that people lens. So every single business decision is about ensuring that our humans at work are treated the way we want them to be treated. And that's through recognition, that's through feedback, and that's through leading human and embedding our values and behaviors in everything that we do. So that way, it's not just the program that we launch, it's this continuous framework of embedding that in our culture every single day and how we make business decisions. So that's how I've seen that come to life continuously.
My perspective too, thanks Sharon, is also, you know, certainly leading by example is important, and open door policy and making yourself present and aware are all pretty basic needs and things that we do at Workhuman. But I also think, you know, leaning into the data a little bit, you know, looking across not just within your organization, but also across the company, across departments, and look for those pockets and opportunities to really accentuate good behavior. I think that's incredibly important. And it isn't just about, you know, giving awards and making sure people are recognized. It's certainly a big part of it, but making sure you're, you know, going in and congratulating people, doubling down on that experience and strengthening that recognition bond. I think that's something that, you know, everybody in the organization needs to do, leadership all the way down. I mean, all the way through.
I would also just add that there's power and that everybody's brought along for the ride, you know, and it's not just your leaders giving you recognition, it's across the board, and that's at every single level. You know, I had an experience where I recognized Eric, our CEO. He had a town hall where he spoke on something that was really important, and it resonated with me. So I sent him a recognition moment, and it was my first time recognizing him, and he responded back with a thank you. And that's, I mean, it's such a little thing to do, but when your CEO recognizes that you recognize them, it matters, and it brought us along. Not only that, but now we're in each other's work circles, so he sees my awards all the time, so that's never a bad thing. But on top of that, he also, there's a way in our software where you can actually tell someone how you're spending your recognition. And he actually sent me a personal note letting me know how he was spending the recognition that I sent him with something with his family. So it brought me along with him. It created a bond between the two of us. And that's at all levels, cross-functionally, cross-organizationally, across the pond into Dublin and back. And it brings everybody along, which I think is so powerful and so meaningful. It really sets what we do at Workhuman so apart from so many others.
I want to just amplify one thing. I think that was terrific, Jana. Thank you. The cross-functional piece for me, from a leadership perspective, is the thing that's really important as I reflect on our ability, my ability, and the rest of our leadership team to bring us to the next stage. I mean, certainly recognition at all levels amongst all folks is important, and you've heard all the benefits of that. But recognition cross-functionally, I think, has created such a strong bond from a leadership perspective of our team that we're able to be more effective leaders. We're able to be more anticipatory of issues coming up because we have that bond, because we were brought into each other's work circles and know how what we're proud of and how we're spending the monetary value of our recognition awards. So I think that's another aspect that just sort of creating those bonds where, especially with different geographies, different locations, different functions, bringing that connection really can elevate your leadership ability.
And one other piece too, just to pivot off what Lauren said as well, I think particularly during these times when you've got a lot of people that may be either introverts or individual contributors, that if they're not physically in the office getting that recognition from people, what a great way to make sure and test to make sure that you're getting a good reach or spread of recognition throughout the organization where they wouldn't normally have that during non-COVID times, as an example. So we're seeing that doubling down really coming into play with a lot of our customers as well.
And I think, Chris, to pivot off that, I think we might have all seen some news stories about COVID times where, women in the workplace may be leaving because of some challenges that they have. So as these teams here really think about their projects and how they can create their projects with COVID times in mind and thinking about advancing women in the workplace, any advice that this panel would give for this group as they really bring these projects to life?
I would say, I put it briefly on the chat, always pulse your people. Levels of stress and loneliness are an all-time high, regardless of what workplace you're in. If you have a people-first culture, you will ensure that voices are being heard. It's really easy to hide right now. And this is advice and coaching that I give my own business units and leaders, that don't let anyone suffer in silence. And it's very easy to behind a computer screen all day. So always pulse your people, always get the mood of your organization, always ensure that people are aligned to your values and behaviors, and make sure that you're touching base really often and recognizing your people in moments of stress, high workload, etc. So that's, for me, top of mind right now, and a great way to ensure that nothing gets lost.
Yeah, and I would actually piggyback off of what Sharon is saying. I'm keeping an eye out on our Slack channels. And if I'm noticing that I'm not seeing conversations from certain people, I am actually reaching out to those people and just checking and doing daily check-ins. How you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? I'm in the office. Is there anything that you need? Just be mindful of the stress levels, especially amongst the women who will have children at home with them, that they're trying to do their jobs. They're trying to teach their children. Be mindful of schedules. Okay, they may not be able to be doing their jobs 8 hours a day. So be very mindful of that. If 4 hours a day is what they can do, give them that. If that's all they can do. We really, really need to have to be flexible with what we can get from our humans right now.
One thing I've done too on my team is, I think Zoom is providing a great service and making it, providing flexibility. It's letting people bring their whole selves to work. There's kids in backgrounds, there's dogs coming on board. I think it's all great. I think one thing that I've watched in my group is when you have these large meetings, not only are people attending, because I'll have meetings every other day with my team just for check-ins collectively, but I'm also monitoring to make sure who's actually engaged in the conversation, who's speaking, or who's just sort of, chugging along. And there's people that I particularly watch out for if they're living by themselves or they don't have a lot of interactions with people, but trying to gauge some of those nonverbal signs during these Zoom calls. I've done a lot with my organization just to ensure they're still sort of engaged.
And the flexibility too. I mean, I think that companies are touting that they're being flexible and understanding. And I think it's that put your money where your mouth is moment, right? And I think that we do a lot of that at Workhuman, that if you can attend a meeting, to like this one today, like record it and share it and not make that a stigma if you can't attend or if you have to cut out early for any reason. We have a really good work-life harmony at Workhuman anyway, but I think that COVID has given us the opportunity to even look further and to even give more and understand the different facets and the different kind of balances that we're having to do, right now. The juggle, I like to say the juggle is real. I have 2 young kids myself. One of which was an actual pandemic baby and born in March. So, I understand it greatly. And when there's flexibility and when there's, a dog barking or a baby crying or whatever it is in the background that people are understanding, even if they're not in that same situation, it means the world, because as we all know, and especially for women in the workforce, like there's nothing more important to us than being able to be taken seriously and professionally and be able to balance it. So working for a company that really, again, put their money where their mouth is from a support and flexibility and harmony perspective really is so important. So having those recordings, having that flexibility, moving a meeting if needed, or, whatever the case really means a lot.
The highlight of my team meeting yesterday was actually watching a 1-year-old have his first Wendy's French fry. It was amazing.
I love that. Thank you. Well, thank you to the panelists. I'm going to turn it back over to Allison and open the floor for